Toto Wolff versus Christian Horner. So far this season, we haven't been able to quite feel the ignition of the race rivalry the same way it did the last season. The battle between Toto Wolff and Christian Horner in 2021 was a furious one, with the two fighting it out strongly, as it was presented in the media for the whole world to see. True, Lewis and Max did a really good job, but it was Toto's and Christian's own rivalry that drew the attention of viewers. The reason why there's not been as much intriguing flow yet as with the last season is because the Mercedes cars are much more slower than the Red Bull. However, the game shall always continue and the real rivals will always clash against each other, and that's the same case as with Canadian racers. This video will lead us through the series of happenings. Are you ready? Let's go. So we all had a lot of expectations for the Canadian Grand Prix, but as we have mentioned already, it didn't disappoint in some ways. Fernando Alonso was on the front row, and on the third row, the hassle was locking out. Charles and Perez were equally starting outside the points. It turned out that Max Verstappen won in the end. Due to the fact that the sport this year did not turn out as expected, it has had its worst. Like so far. Alonso himself could not even find a way to convert into the big points from his front row start. The FIA came up with a new announcement revealing the new rules formulated to player against bouncing the levels too risky or dangerous to their safety. This was equally a lot to talk about. Yeah. The news came in on Thursday with the FIA stating that their concern was to focus on the safety of the racers and that they would definitely implement those changes after they were done observing how much the cars bounce. Their observations was to discover what was going on in each of the representing cars, come to a conclusion of what level is acceptable, and formulate new rules with punishments for teams which fail in meeting up to that acceptable level in the future. There's a lot to be told as to the reasons why this season's show calls Wolff and Horner's biggest battle yet. But much more important before this is to discuss the intervention of the FIA in this season and what really it means to us, the sports fans. How did the FIA announcement come about? Well, over the last 2 weeks, each time a Mercedes team member came with a camera, they kept complaining about the issue of bouncing. Yeah, in a way, this was somewhat amusing. Here's something to show what I mean. A highlight of Lewis Hamilton taking a bow away from his car just after Baku is done holding his back, just as the way elderly people do to get at an object. Funny, right? I know. Yes, much more because it even got obvious that this very action was derided by the game's viewers and team principals. The announcement of FIA's intervention on Thursday seemed like a dream come true for George and Louis, who have both been expecting such a change from the FIA so as to let them the opportunity to leverage their influence to achieve their goals. Initially, this did not look like a change that would turn in the favor of Mercedes. It absolutely even looked as if Mercedes would be the first culprit following the announcement of the new rule. However, it turned out the exact opposite as time progressed, and this has led the other teams to point accusing fingers right at Mercedes for being influencers to the adoption of the new rules, which apparently didn't turn in their own favors as much. As we now know, this isn't all the first time there's been such accusation clash between Mercedes and the Red Bull bosses in the lead-up to the Canadian Grand Prix. If you can remember, Horner refused to interview with Toto Wolff on the rivalry in the previous seasons. Horner had said in regard to the rivalry of the previous season, 2021, that if he was being honest, he only was trying to stay true to his values, to keep his heads down, and do just what was felt was the best thing to do in this course. He further noted that the kind of reaction he got with Toto Wolff was the kind he had never, throughout his racing career, experienced while competing with other teams like Ross Brawn, Stefano Domenicali, Ron Dennis, and Flavio Briatore. In that same press release where Horner had claimed that his own relationship with Matteo Binotto, the Scuderia team principal, and the Red Bull versus Ferrari rivalry was completely different from what he was used to. He added that it had been contained to remain on the track, noting that it was really a healthy practice. It's the way it should be, Horner had said. He went on to note that this wasn't like the previous season's experience, where the game bubbled over into a lot of off-track politicking and various other things happening behind the scenes. In the same statement, he noted that this issue was a lot less personal at the moment. Another funny thing that happened was when Horner and Wolff publicly quickly went into a heated debate that went around Canada. What was the cause of the argument? I'll tell you. It was because of the bouncing problems of the Mercedes, given that there was a new regulation issued at the start of the game of this season. People have said a lot of funny things to say about this situation. Someone had said that Wolff lost his S in the course of the argument, and another witness stated that Wolff had undergone into full Abu Dhabi spec, meaning that he had an apple in his eyes. Funny, right? Mercedes really did some things that pushed the other team bosses over the edge, leaving them with no other option other than collaborating to rival Toto. In a technical derivative statement released on Thursday, the technical derivatives stated that the team were not allowed to chance to add a new state to their cars to help reduce purposing for the sake of safety of the drivers. Here's what will shock you. This came in on Thursday only, and by Friday, the very next day, Mercedes was already up with a new state fitted. Like, man, how is that even possible? It was completely incredible. This raised a lot of questions, like how could an announcement come in on Thursday that involved designing and engineering, and by the next day, something had already been produced and tested to be true? Here, doubts began to come in, and it seemed like Mercedes had been informed all the way. It was just unbelievable. No one could just think of how they'd been able to do all that over the night. Omar Stoffnauer, boss at Alpine, expressed his belief when he said that there was no way his team could have possibly engineered that state in just a day. In his words, the TD came out when our chief technical officer was flying over, so it was quite late. We weren't able to produce a stay here. The suspicion was that it could be that if the FIA had tipped off Mercedes beforehand that the chance to make a state while the game was on would be allowed in this season. It surely had to be that Mercedes had heard before now, perhaps by rumors or something, that such a change would be made for this season's edition. Even by the Saturday morning, the stay was gone. Mercedes, however, stated that the stay didn't help them as much, so they had to remove it. Still, this doesn't explain how they were able to produce a fitting car within a space of less than 24 hours. Some other speculations flying around Canada was that since Shayla and Rayo, former executives at Mercedes, were appointed FIA Secretary General on a temporary basis for the sports, it could also be Shayla and Rayo had served as a kind of special channel or source through which the information may have been open to them. The theory at work is that it was removed by the team because they feared the other teams would protest it. An investigation carried out by the FIA may have revealed some things that Mercedes were going to seal. A meeting was held where Toto was asked by the team principals how it was that his team had so quickly managed to design and engineer the car. In response, Toto complained that the other teams were not doing anything to resolve the issue of the bouncing in the cars, and Horner told him pointedly to first take off the beam in his eyes before looking to take off the speck in another's. No one was quite so direct in the meeting, apparently. Matteo Benanati, the principal team for the Ferrari's teams, was not also in the support of Wolff when he was drawn into the dispute. Mattia's view was in the regulations needed to be rewritten, and the Wolff was making a demand because his team, Mercedes, had failed with the season's 2022 car design. After the confrontational meeting happened, Toto Wolff was at the media to say that the situation had obviously gone too far. He first noted that the game was all about keeping a competitive advantage or gaining it, and then everything had gone too far. Critiques have called this media statement by Wolff hypocritical, giving instances where him and his team had been most actively involved in playing the politicized game of this season. The accusation laid on the Mercedes had really been strong. People strongly believed, even without clear evidence, that there would surely be an inside man at FIA leaking information to Mercedes, and Mercedes had been leveraging on this influence to make things happen. Wolff's statement to the media, as we can see, said nothing about having an insider who leaked info to them. The truth is that they cannot see if all of these claims are true at the moment, since there has been no evidences to prove, but we can suggest what it means for the game and for fans. Again, this season's was really disappointing based on the expectations that'll be built following the success of the last season. For we fans, it means that we expect a perfect makeover in the coming seasons, and for the game teams, it's a call to sit up tight. In conclusion, the FIA's intervention to protecting the interest of the drivers by putting punitive measures for teams that don't protect their racers is a welcome development. The team bosses didn't appear to like the sudden change that came from the season, but we can only hope it's for the better. It surprised the team bosses that it seemed the game had been politicized by Mercedes, and while they comically argued through the possibility of what had happened, the game just had to continue. Most hope that the F1 panics get to the level of Silverstone, the whole controversies would be blown over, and everyone would be able to pay attention to the sport. Subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe icon down below this video for more interesting sports news. You can also click on the notification button to hear us immediately when we have news for you. Please drop your opinion on this matter on the comments section below. We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.